All right, I think good to see everybody out there. Hey, Maud, how are you doing today?
I'm really good, and you?
Good. We're going to give a few moments for everyone to come in. While we wait, if there's anybody in the audience who can actually hear us or who can see us, feel free to put in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're coming in from. I am outside Nashville, Tennessee at the moment, and Maud, Jean-Yves, I'll let you all tell them where you're coming in from.
Yeah, actually, I come from France, but I live in Montreal. So yeah, I went in Canada 17 years ago.
Wow. Well, maybe that's a podcast episode waiting to happen. I'll have to learn about how you landed in Montreal, but maybe now's not the time or place. But
that's another story.
Glad to have you here for sure. Looks like we have a lot of people from, well, okay, so some from Montreal. We have Minneapolis, so up north. Ohio, very cool. My wife's family's from Ohio. Sweden, okay. Canada, Ontario, a lot of Canadian representation. I think I saw South Africa at one point. Very cool. California, Arizona. Wow. Okay, we have people from all over, and people know how to use the chat, which is fantastic. I know you all have plans to use that. Maud, I didn't let you say anything.
Oh, wow. What can I say? I'm from Montreal as well, born and raised.
It's a wonderful city. I was there last year, and I can't wait to go back. But all right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're 1 minute past, so I think we have, I would say we have a quorum. They usually let everybody in by now. So welcome to today's webinar, IEC 62366-1 Essentials, Elevating User Safety in Medical Devices. My name is Etienne Nichols. I am the moderator and a medical device guru at Greenlight Guru. So during today's session, we invite you to be an active participant. We want your participation. So many of you have already found the chat tab, which is fantastic. Feel free to continue to chat with each other. If you see somebody from nearby, feel free to give them an emoji wave or something like that, so they know that that they have been seen. That being said, if you ask questions in the chat, we may not get to them, or they may get lost in the chat occasionally. So if you have specific questions you want us to ask, feel free to use that Q&A tab up there on the top ribbon on the right. Even if you don't have a Q&A or a question specifically that you'd like to ask, we'd love it if you go ahead and check out the Q&A, because you have the opportunity to upvote specific questions. That allows us to ask the relevant questions at the end that are relevant to you, the audience. Also, we always get this question, will you be sending the recording or the slides? Yes, we will be sending out the full recording and the presentation slides to all registrants after the live event. So feel free to watch your inbox for that follow-up email, and we'll get that to you. All right, I'd like to say a few words about Greenlight Guru. Our mission is to improve the quality of life through our work in the medtech sector, likely a similar goal to many of you who are here today. So we host these free webinars to share valuable insights, learn from top industry experts, and showcase our industry-leading solutions. Our software is designed to help medtech companies bring life-changing products to patients faster, more efficiently, and with less risk. Our medtech suite includes software solutions for product development, quality management, and clinical data management. They're all tailored specifically for the medical device industry. So if you're interested in learning why over 1,100 leading medtech companies have chosen Greenlight Guru, feel free to visit www.greenlight.guru for your personalized demo after today's webinar. Okay, let's introduce today's expert presenters. Jean-Yves Perret is, did I say that correctly?
Yes,
I got your last time correct. Okay. Jean-Yves is the director of the quality assurance team at CLEIO, and Maud Leclerc de Guire is a senior human factors specialist at CLEIO. At CLEIO, the synergy between Jean-Yves and Maud is instrumental in shaping the future of medical devices. Their joint efforts focus on optimizing both the safety and usability of each product, aligning with CLEIO's dedication to excellence and innovation. So this dynamic duo is committed to enhancing patient care through their meticulous attention to detail and deep understanding of user needs. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Jean-Yves and Maud to kick off today's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Etienne. And thank you very, very much to attending our webinar today. So it's a pleasure to take part of the True Quality Roadshow. And today's presentation will be about IEC 62366-1, but more generally speaking, about human factors and usability engineering in product development. Let's have a quick background about CLEIO and who we are. So CLEIO is a leading medical device design firm. We are located in Canada, and we are a team of 90 experts from both Canada and the US. Since 2005, CLEIO has been involved in more than 2,000 projects with a single desire, designing innovative medical devices that can shape our future. We are ISO 13485 certified, and our proven approach to medical device development combines strategy, human factors, design, engineering, and quality assurance. We have experience in various fields, including oncology, respiratory, cardiovascular, and digital health systems. This makes us a solid partner of choice for your next project. So in this presentation, we decided to show you how the usability and human factors activities are embedded in the design and development process of medical devices. After a presentation of the regulatory background of medical devices and human factors, we will go through human factors activities for each major step of the development life cycle. We will use the FDA waterfall representation of design controls to guide our journey, and we'll go beyond the strict application of the IEC 62366-1 for risk management, explaining when, how, why, and by who human factors should be performed. So at each step, we will provide you with some tips and pitfalls based on our experience. To complete our introduction, so as Etienne said, my name is Jean-Yves Perret. I lead the quality assurance team at CLEIO. My background is in mechanical engineering, and I have a master in risk management. I fell into quality assurance very soon in my career. I have implemented and managed several QMS and supported the development of various medical devices. I really enjoy collaborating on medical device projects with all the different experts required, such as my colleague Maud.
Happy to be here. I'm Maud Leclerc-Deguire, and I've been working at CLEIO for about 5 years now. My background is in industrial design. I wasn't predestined for human factors per se, and it was by chance that I discovered the specialty during one of our first medical product development project, which brings together everything that's most important to me, which means people, health, design, and safety. So let's begin this presentation with a question. So according to you, what makes a quality medical device? We'll give you a few seconds. You can write your answer, submit your answer in the chat box. I wanna open the chat to see, because they're curious to see like what's your opinion about what brings quality. Keep it very simple. I like it.
Simplicity.
Sometimes simplicity is really complicated to achieve. Safe, but very efficient. It works. Traceability, consistency. Okay, so safety is coming very often in the answers. A device that meets the user needs, explicit and implicit. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So the typical answers that we see is clinical effectiveness and performance, obviously. Also safety and security, as many of you mentioned in your answer, regulatory compliance, without a doubt. Reliability, manufacturing quality, indeed. But what about user experience and user satisfaction? For instance, ease of handling, adequate wording on a GUI, so graphic user interface. User experience and satisfaction are part of the human factors and usability engineering approach and are important elements to keep in mind when it comes to make a quality medical product. But then maybe you're wondering, what is human factors? So there are several schools of thoughts as to whether human factors and usability engineering are synonym, as an example, or whether they are a difference between the two. So this question could be the subject of a webinar in itself. So for the sake of simplicity, let's consider the term human factors and usability engineering interchangeable. So if we look at the definitions, it says that human factor is the extent to which a product can be used by a specific user or a specific beneficiary, a patient, for instance, to achieve specific objectives or specific tasks effectively, efficiently, and satisfactorily under real-life condition, which means in the target use environment. Now that we have, let's say, a global and more common understanding of what human factor is, let's dive into the application of this expertise in our product development process, starting with the regulatory pathway.
So throughout this presentation, we will show you how quality assurance and human factors work hand in hand to develop safe medical devices. As you know, medical devices and technologies are evolving faster and faster. We are witnessing a transformation of medical devices, which is propelled by new technologies. We're talking about wireless connectivity and Bluetooth capabilities, the Internet of Medical Things that allows better patient monitoring, wearable devices made possible by the miniaturization of technology, and as well as robotically assisted surgical platforms. Among these new technologies are smart medical devices powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning, which present both opportunities and new challenges. For instance, artificial intelligence induces a shift in control perception from users. Indeed, users are no longer in control of all the parameters of their medical device treatment. The device manages part of the treatment for them, and users need to adapt to that. With these new technologies come the challenges of managing increasingly complex user interfaces. Today's medical devices often feature screens, tablets, and phone applications accompanied by a lot of symbols, alarms, and notifications to handle. While these innovations offer unprecedented functionality, they also demand careful consideration of usability to ensure that healthcare professionals and patients can effectively navigate and utilize these interfaces. In parallel, we are witnessing the emergence of new use environments and a shift toward home healthcare, where patients are increasingly managing their own care outside of professional clinical settings. This change in use environment introduces new considerations for usability, as devices must be intuitive and user-friendly for non-professional caregivers. So from lay operators or patients with diverse abilities to healthcare professionals with varying level of expertise, medical devices manufacturers need to account for a broad spectrum of user profiles in their design and development processes. And finally, as we navigate these changes, it's crucial to acknowledge the increasing risk related to usability. For example, in the top 10 health hazards for 2024 report issued by IEC, usability challenges for home users arrives in first position. Let's have a quick look at the regulatory compliance before going through the process. We all know that the regulatory landscape is becoming quite complex and is evolving quickly. I don't know how you feel when you are seeing the slide, but for me it's a lot. It can be quite overwhelming. That is why I try to organize these references in a manageable and understandable way. So my goal is to provide you with the main regulations, standards, and guidance documents that are considered in our daily practice as medical device developers and quality assurance managers. This list is not exhaustive and focuses mainly on the design and development part of the medical device lifecycle. On top, we have the well-known standards that we use for managing our QMS and design controls during development. So we are talking about the ISO 13485 and FDA QSR 21 CFR 820. Then, risk management is the second major part of our activities as QM managers. So ISO 14971 and its related technical reports are the basis for our processes. Then, depending on the characteristics of your medical devices, a wide range of standards and guidance documents can be used and integrated in your development process. These references can be used to establish and define your processes, such as IEC 62304 for software development, or to ensure a safe design and mitigate risk, such as the IEC 6601 for mechanical and electrical risks. I won't expand on all these categories today. Let's rather have a deeper look into usability and human factors. So from a human factor perspective, you need to consider the IEC 62366-1 standard application of usability engineering to medical devices and its related technical report that provides guidance on the standard itself. But if you want to go further, you also have the standard from the AIMI HE75, Human Factors Engineering, Design of Medical Devices, that you can also consider. And it provides extensive information on how to apply different tools and methods for human factors engineering. If your device is to be commercialized on the US soil, the FDA final guidance from 2016 applying human factors and usability engineering to medical devices shall be considered, as well as a draft guidance issued in 2022 on the content of human factors information in medical device marketing submissions, which provides first a decision flowchart, and secondly, the list and examples of the information you need to include in your submission files. By the way, the FDA intends to revise the guidance from 2016 to replace the documentation section and the annex by the content of the draft guidance from 2022. And finally, depending on your device and the intended use environment, additional guidance documents shall apply. For example, design consideration for devices intended for home use, or the series of guidances related to the drug-device combination products, which have their specific considerations and others. You can also have a look into other guidances, for example, related to consumer devices, if you want.
So let me ask you another question. When should human factors be involved in the product life cycle? I'm really curious to see your answer. You can use, once again, the chat box. You can write down your answer ASAP, like that. Design all phases as soon as possible. Start of development from day zero. Oh, there's so many answers. I like that. Very beginning, always. From the very start. During D&D and post-market, all phases. Okay. Good. So thank you for answers, by the way. From the very beginning, honestly, it is really important that human factors be involved from the very beginning of any design and development project, mainly because they have a huge impact and they add value in the first steps of a project. Because we participate very early in the user and market research to define the real needs of the users. So our human factors specialists from the very beginning of a project work very closely with the design team. So let's dig a little deeper on how these two do it. So why human factors and design can be dissociated, according to us? Well, because the user is at the heart of their concerns. Design is an umbrella term for many specializations, user experience design, industrial design, interaction design, and many, many more. Designers tend to understand the problem first and get their hands dirty in solving it. Human factors, on the other hand, focuses on defining the environment of use, context of use, user profiles or user groups, in order to reduce the risks of use to an acceptable level. So I would say by nature, human factors specialists are researchers with a user-centered approach. So in our view at CLEIO, human factors specialists provide designers, but also other stakeholders in the project as well, with valuable and factual data to design a safe, usable, but also a satisfying product. The most important thing to remember today is to surround your human factors specialist, if you have some, in your company with people who have this user-centered philosophy in their work in order to pull all the chances on your side to significantly increase the quality, but also the success of your product. As I mentioned earlier, human factor specialists are researchers. So now let's look at a very high-level definition of their work process. So this is a simplified overview of the process, as I mentioned. So first, we have to identify. So the users, but also the beneficiary, could be the patients, for instance, the use environment, what are the user interface components, the known issues or adverse events from a similar device, but also the critical tasks from the workflow. So once you've been able to gather all these information that you identify, you're able to research and design, meaning you have to define your research question or your objective. So why do you want to test this and why do you want to test it? Conduct some tests. There are many ways to do it, many tools and methodologies available. Identify use-related errors and risks, and then iterate. We won't say that enough. Iteration is the name of the game when it comes to human factor, but more broadly speaking, when it comes to development process. So a use risk-based approach must be maintained throughout this process. And thirdly, there is the validation testing. So this is the ultimate test to demonstrate that the product is safe to use. But then how does this process fit into the product development process? So we will show you in the next slides how to effectively incorporate the human factors, activities, and deliverables in the product lifecycle.
Thanks, Maud. So let's talk about the planning phase first. So during the planning phase, the human factors team produces the usability plan, which describes all the main activities for each phase of the development. The human factor activities need to be fully integrated into other development and risk management activities. It's really important. At CLEIO, the usability plan is directly included in the design and development plan that we do. So this plan includes, among others, activity related to use specifications, use-related risk analysis, as well as user interface specifications and planning for formative evaluations and summative evaluations. In addition to these activities, the plan should also include the methods and tools planned to be used to execute these activities. For example, do we plan to produce user flows, user journey maps, conduct a task analysis, or review the competitor documentation, or even produce mock-ups that are then used for formative evaluations. And you can refer to the FDA guidance on human factors for the various tools and methods that you can use. And again, the HE75 standard for more information on how to apply them in your development process. The plan will also define the responsibilities of all the individuals involved in the planned activities. As Maud said, there is a close collaboration between human factors and other stakeholders, such as user interface designers, industrial designers, and of course, quality assurance. My first tip will be define your regulatory strategy early to have more accurate planning. You need to customize your usability plan to comply with the applicable regulations, but also to comply with the risk level and specificity of your medical device. If your device is home use or drug device combination product or class 1 with exemption or class 3 with high risk, the plan will not be the same. And then the development process generally begins by the definition of the user needs. The user needs guide all the subsequent development activities. But first, to define them, we need to define three main things. Who are the users and patients? So through user profiles and identification of patient populations. What is the use environment? And what is the intended use of the medical device that you are developing? This constitutes the use specifications. Several methods are used to generate the use specifications. So we can use market research. We can research on competitors' devices and documentation. We can use user research through field observations of users or interviews, sessions with subject matter experts. It is more and more complex to identify all the use specifications due to several things. First, the increasing type of users. Users can be trained professionals such as physicians, surgeons, or nurses, or lay operators, just as caregivers at home, who can be your family, your friends, or the patients themselves. Then there is a huge spectrum of user considerations to take into account. We are talking about abilities, for example, physical, the strengths, sensory. Do the users have the right vision or hearing to perform a task? Cognitive abilities like literacy, or emotional, anxiety, fear, etc. The increasing types of use environments as well create it more difficult to define the use specifications. We talk about home healthcare facilities, emergency services, or operating rooms. All are separate and different. And regarding patient population, it is important to define it because it is part of the intended use. Is a device intended for children, adults, elderly that will impact the development? In parallel to the use specifications, human factors and quality assurance teams start collecting and studying the existing available information on known use hazards. This activity will be the premise to the use-related risk analysis, and that we will detail in the next section. To do that, we can go through the medical device databases for incidents, adverse events, and in the FDA guidance again, the FDA provides a list of ADA-related databases that you may use. You can also research into company internal database if you have already similar products on the market, such complaints or CAPA reports, or any other information available. As a side note, there is more and more performant artificial intelligence tools that you can use to perform this activity and accelerate your development. And finally, the use specifications, once defined with the intended use as well, are essential to define the user needs. And that's a very important step of the development for us.
So my favorite part, tips and pitfalls. In terms of top tips, so share the use specifications with all stakeholders in the project. Everybody must be on the same page when it comes to product definition. Also, don't hesitate to bonify the use specifications by conducting different kinds of user research activities. In other words, close your computer, get out of your office and meet the users. Talk to them, observe them in their environment, and gather insights. And as for pitfalls, do not start to define these specifications too late in the process. Use specifications act as a foundation for product definition activities, and feeding this document too late can lead to major drifts in the product development process. And most importantly, as a manufacturer, you cannot define alone the user need. You are not the user is a well-known phrase among designers and human factor specialists. You need to equip your team with user-centered specialists who can identify user needs or validate or counter-validate existing user needs in a methodological and unbiased way.
So then the development team needs to translate the user needs into design inputs related to, for example, the user interface. While user needs can be vague and qualitative, design inputs should be more detailed, specific, and quantitative. You can use the SMART approach to establish your design inputs. So specific, measurable, attainable, reachable, and testable requirements. At this step, the human factor team conducts a task analysis as well by doing a breakdown of each task and interaction between the user and the device. The task analysis will be used to identify use errors and use scenarios. Then it is also time to starting the use-related risk analysis, or URRA. This analysis is established using the hazard identified previously and the results of the task analysis. For all hazards, hazardous situations and harm are determined. And by the way, the risk module of Green Guru is a very efficient tool to identify the hazards and harms. You can use the standardized adverse event codes from the IMGRF and the FDA. So it's very efficient to use it. But do not forget, the risk level will be estimated based on the severity, and the severity only at first. Indeed, the probability should not be used since it's very difficult to estimate at this stage. The user-related risk analysis is also used to identify risk controls that are in turn translated into design inputs. That's why we want to perform that activity quite soon in the design to transfer the risk control into design inputs as soon as possible. And again, the Green Guru risk and product modules allow to quickly and efficiently link the risk controls to the design inputs.
So in terms of top tips, a task analysis is a great way to identify the user interface characteristics related to safety. There are many ways and methodologies to do so, but this tool, I must say, is really easy and efficient to use. I highly recommend it. And do not hesitate to involve designers or engineers in this activity. The better their understanding of the workflow and the risk associated with its use, the better they are able to design a safe product right from the preliminary concepts. So this approach reduces the number of unforeseen problems during the development phase. And in terms of pitfalls, so during your task analysis, try to maintain a reasonable level of details. Don't hesitate to determine this level of details required by presenting your task analysis to some of your colleagues who have a good understanding of the context of use. Like, too much could be a burden sometimes. And don't try to be creative here. Support your task analysis, but also your use-related risk analysis with your previous work. Use specifications, known issues and adverse event identifications, the insight you gather from your user interviews, and so on. So, as mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the heart of the human factors intervention is the use risks. IEC 62366-1 states that usability engineering process mitigate risk caused by user interaction problems associated with normal use, such as use error. But then maybe you're wondering, what is a use error? So a use error is an incorrect or omitted action by the user that results in a different outcome that the manufacturer's intent or the user's expectation. There are three types or sources of user errors. It can come from the perception, so difficulty to see a visual indicator, for instance. The cognition, failure to remember, or the user is improvising to complete the task. Or the action, manipulation. So the inability to reach a comment because it's too high. So it is important to remember that a single-use error may include more than one type or source. This way of analyzing the risk of use is called the PCA technique, which stands for perception, cognition, and action. It is a very useful tool to give some deepness to your task analysis and your URRA as well. Now that you identify your risks and its type, how can you reduce its severity?
The quick answer is through the design process. So how do we reduce use-related risk? We reduce it by iteratively designing safe user interfaces and testing them through formative evaluations. So what is a user interface? User interface includes every means by which the user and the medical device interact with each other. And that goes both ways. So everything the user can physically touch, enclosures, handles, knobs, tactile displays, etc., is included, as well as the software graphical user interface, or GUI, all the alarms, indicators, notifications that can be visual or auditive, and one that is often forgotten, labeling and the instructions for use. That's also very important to consider it as part of the user interface. So designer, with the support of human factors, elaborate the user specifications, the user interface specifications. And on that topic, there is a difference between the FDA and the IEC standard. User interface specifications are part of the IEC 62366-1 process, while they are not required by the FDA guidance. But at CLEIO, user specifications are always produced since they are used to guide the design of the product and also software development. So it's important for us to develop them.
So Jean-Yves mentioned the term formative evaluation. So what is a formative evaluation? Well, the aim of it is to iteratively improve a product's user interface. And I want to put the emphasis on the word iteratively. So my favorite adage is, when in doubt, test. So according to us, the most effective way to reduce use risks is by testing the device, or could be the proof of concept, the prototype, or the mock-up. It doesn't matter. With participants, users in a laboratory, could be a simulated use environment, for instance, in your office, or in the actual use environments, if possible. Formative evaluation is the common term used to describe a test during the development process. Not before, and especially not after the development process. It should be into this part of the process. The amount of formative evaluations mainly depends on the complexity of the user interface and on the severity of the harm associated with the use of this medical device. So at CLEIO, we decided to do things differently, I would say with a twist, and we encourage you to do so. So each formative evaluation is conducted by a human factor specialist, assisted by the designers who is in charge of the product's design. So we see the benefits to go beyond the perimeter of the human factors and imply the wider design approach to our methodology. So that's why we also test the user experience during a formative evaluation, and why any issue that comes up is treated as seriously as a use risk, even though it's not that clearly or officially required by the regulatory instances. So we value collaboration. So we use tools such as Figma or Miro to increase cohesion within the project team. Figma is a tool for creating wireframes and interactive prototypes. So in the majority of our projects, we use Figma to create test materials for formative evaluation. Super efficient, very quick and easy, and it gives very rapidly results. Miro is also a great tool for communicating content quickly and efficiently as well. For each project, I would say, we create a board. So this is kind of huge whiteboard that brings together all the expertise involved in the project. And this also shared with our customers, with our clients, so they can see progress or leave us questions or comments at any time. So let's take a look at one of our most recent projects. So we designed a console that is used during angioplasty to facilitate the treatment of calcified artery disease. So ways to perform a formative evaluation can vary a lot. There is plenty of tools and methodology out there. So for this project, we started with a very early formative evaluation in the actual use environment with the end users, which was a blast. So we did the first test maybe 3 to 4 weeks right after the beginning of the project. And as you can see of the left side of the screen, we created the crude cardboard mock-up to quickly assess its volumetry in the environment, but also with the peripheral equipment, its handling, the right viewing height for the integrated display, so for the graphic user interface, and many more. During the development process, we conduct about 5 formative evaluations. So carrying 2 experiential dimensions, so the digital, but also the physical, we conduct formative evaluations on one or the other. And you can see on the right side of the screen, the final product. So several iterations and tests were necessary to achieve this result. So when conducting formative evaluation, we strongly recommend you to follow these 3 golden rules. So first, one formative evaluation is not enough. The name of the game is to iterate. Include people with a user-centered approach during the test. And thirdly, even if user risk identification is crucial, take a broader approach by testing the user experience as a whole. And some of you might be wondering, like, how many participants should I recruit for a formative evaluation? Well, according to HE75, the sweet spot is something between 5 to 8 per evaluation.
So now let's address the verification step of the development plan. Oops, sorry. We discussed in the previous section how the design process is performed iteratively using formative evaluations results to improve the design of the user interface. Once the design is completed and final, so we can talk about design freeze or production equivalent units, designers need to verify that the user interface meets all the established design inputs, including risk controls. Test cases are established generally using the data from the task analysis or use scenarios to test the user interface. So here again, we reuse all the available information. But other methods and tools can also be used, such as expert reviews, cognitive walkthrough, or inquiries. Verification activities often begin too late in the development process. We hear comments such as, we will deal with verification later, or it's not a priority right now, let's have a device first. But it is important to think about verification early in the development process, and even from the moment the design inputs are established. That is true not only for usability, but for all the design inputs that we establish. Remember the SMART acronym that can be used for requirements? The T is for testable. This means that design inputs also need to include acceptance criteria in their statement. Then people sometimes think that formative evaluations are verification activities, but they are not. Formative evaluations are performed earlier and iteratively in the development to guide the design of the user interface. They are part of the design process phase. At the verification stage, the design is already completed. So it is no more time to evaluate costly changes that we need to do to the user interface. And finally, we will discuss the validation phase. So validation of the user interface generally takes the form of summative evaluations. Summative evaluations can be thought as a validation of the use-related safety aspects of the user interface. In other terms, we aim to validate the safe use of the device. Summative evaluations are a way to verify the effectiveness of the risk control measures, which may include the risk control by labeling, instruction for use, and training. But summative evaluations are not the only way to validate user interfaces.
So as for the summative evaluation, here are some things to keep in mind when writing your protocol. So firstly, focus your attention on the critical tasks. That's the more important thing. Also, if possible, carry out the test in the actual use environment. You will learn a lot. Like the quality of your data will be improved, that's for sure. Sample size. So FDA recommend, or at least require, that you should recruit 15 participants per user group or profile. If you can have more, well, then do it. I recommend like the more the better. If training is part of the protocol, try to include a waiting period between the training sessions and the evaluation per se to allow your representative participants some learning decay.
And in these slides, we wanted to summarize the main deliverables expected in a human factors file and that need to be included in the DHF of the product. As stated before, even if they are part of the design and development process, not all of these records are required by the FDA. So we are talking about use specifications, the use-related risk analysis, and the identification of critical tasks, user interface specifications, and user interface evaluation plan. Those two are more on the IEC process than the FDA. Formative evaluation reports, user interface validation reports as well, which may include summative evaluations. And at the end, a human factor engineering report to summarize all the process and ensure everything was done properly. The instructions for use and training are also deliverables for the human factors and design teams. One of my last tips will relate to the design reviews. We didn't talk about them, but human factor specialists should be involved in the design reviews to bring the user perspective and to keep the process user-centered. And that's very important for us at CLEIO.
So as this presentation draws to a close, we hope to have conveyed to you, the importance of human factors, because a medical product that is safe is important, but a product that is safe and pleasant to use is even more important in our opinion. So also because human factors and usability engineer encompass the characteristics of the user interface to facilitate use and thereby establishes effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction in the intended use environment. So these three aspects can either increase or decrease safety of a medical device. So when you're thinking about usability or human factor, don't only think about use risks. A bad user experience can increase the probability or at least the severity of your risk. So you have to think about it with a broader approach. And in conclusion, human factors bring value to risk control by reducing use-related errors, by incorporating human factor early in the design of a medical device. You can achieve safety inherent by design. And the benefits are above and beyond user safety, such as better cost and time management during your project, easier, faster, and safer onboarding of your end users, reduced needs for technical support when your product is on the market, higher utilization rates, meaning user and customer adoption, but most importantly, retention, increased sales and revenues, and stronger regulatory record. So thank you for listening. We hope you learned a little more about the importance of human factors in the development of a medical product. And if you would like further information, please download our ebook, which is complementary to this presentation. So it's 10 things you need to know about IEC 62366-1. And do not hesitate to contact your team for any kind of medical product project. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Jean-Yves and Maud, for that wonderful presentation. That was really fantastic. So we did get a lot of questions, and I was just going through them. So maybe we can just go ahead and dive in. The first one comes from Alex with quite a few votes. Do you prefer to evaluate use risks separately from device risks, or do you integrate all sources of risk into a single analysis?
That's a common question that we have, and we can have several ways to do that. The risk matrix for the world system should include every aspect of the risks. But if you want to go deeper into the analysis of the risk related to the usability of the use of the device, you will need to do some side analysis, and the conclusion of that analysis can be then imported into the system matrix. So that's kind of a way to do that. So performing task analysis and the user-related risk analysis, and then incorporating everything as a system. Some clients of ours prefer to maintain one document, so they incorporate everything. Some others prefer to have two separate documents, and so usability risks are related references to the more detailed user-related risk analysis.
All right, very cool. Thank you. Sarah asked the question, how do you document and subsequently evaluate risks identified as part of the usability assessment? She may have already answered some, but yeah, go ahead.
You want to go, Maud? Or I do? Okay. So when you perform an evaluation, whatever it is, it can be literature review at first or database research to identify those hazards. What we try to do is to categorize them, to present them in a more structured way in our risk analysis as well. As I mentioned before, and I don't know if you already used that, but the EMDRF is issuing standardized adverse events codes for different types of hazard or harms as well. These codes are integrated, for example, in the platform of Guru, and that allows us to categorize the hazards that we collect or that we identify through the different methods that we have. And that's how we do it. We try to find and identify everything that's available and known, and then we incorporate everything in the matrix.
If I may add to this, like it's easier to do so when you have predicates or similar devices in terms of data available in these databases. But when you're designing or creating something that never existed in the past, and we faced it in many projects, well, it's hard to identify use risks. So we try to find like devices and products that may be a bit the same. I indirectly, but then I would recommend to conduct super early evaluation. A formative evaluation could be an expert assessment, or it could be with users. So then if you don't have enough data like on the web, you can then create your own by testing something very preliminary.
Okay. Well, since we're on the topic of the formative, Veronica asks, how specific should the plan for usability process be? Do we need to specify evaluation methods, user interfaces, evaluated number of participants, or can it be more general?
All of it, and even more.
Yeah.
And even though like there is some exploratory formative evaluation, I would say mostly at the beginning of the projects, and when like the product and the process is going further, well, then everything becomes more defined. I always see the value for the human factor specialist or representative to think about every aspect of your protocol. Could be few lines or bullet points, but at least you write down something so it's retraceable, and then you took the time to plan your things to be more efficient. So I would recommend, yes.
Okay. And on that same vein, Montserrat asks, would you recommend performing usability protocols during clinical trials or investigations? Is that good practice?
It's a complex question. Some of our clients want to do so. It depends, I would say, in my opinion and past experience, on the resources and also on the budget that you have. And what kind of facility do you have access to conduct your clinical, but also your summative evaluation at the same time? Is this intertwined approach will work for both of your objectives? So I would say it really depends on the extent of what you want to test. I don't know, Jean-Yves, what's your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I was thinking a little like you. If you want to conduct those, you will need to have the real use environment on hand. So that will depend on that fact as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this one, but let's ask this one anyway. Veronica asks, can intended users who are participating in early formative evaluations participate in the human factors validation?
I wouldn't recommend, because they're biased. Even if your product really shift and evaluate from the very first formative evaluation until your summative evaluation, they saw you talk with them, they know what's your job. There's a bias in here. So I would try to recruit new, fresh user participants for the validation.
And during the presentation mode, I saw quickly a question. Generally, how many formative evaluations do you perform during a project?
I saw this question as well. And I asked myself this question a lot in my career, still to this day. Well, I would say it depends. It depends. What I would recommend is try to do a preliminary research. If you know the class of your device and you can kind of guesstimate the risk severity, try to educate yourselves on this kind of device/product, and then try to do a first draft of your user interface evaluation plan. We very often in our usability plan include a preliminary plan of the amount and also the extent and the objective of the formative evaluation we want to conduct during the development process. And very often it change or evolve, but then at least you had some early thoughts about it, but more than one, and in fact more than two, because if you do one evaluation, well, then you identify elements to improve. So then you design it, and then you go back to a second test. So you start the loop, you want to find new ways to improve your design. So as most as possible, I would say.
Okay. No, that was a good question. I saw that as well. I wondered what you all would say. Cole asked the question, what makes a task critical? And that's probably going to be another, it depends, but I was curious what your answer would be as well.
Well, it's the severity of the risk. That's mainly it. It's the severity of the use risk. And when you do your task analysis or any other technique to identify your workflow and also the positive and negative scenarios, you then have to describe the hazardous situation. And then you have to identify the severity of it. The severity of your use risks is related to the severity, the master harm list that is included in the risk matrix. So this is one of many moments during the process that we work really closely with the QA to make sure, okay, in terms of harm, have we identified all of these, and do they match, I would say, the risk matrix, more generally speaking, but also the use-related risk analysis. So once you go over a certain threshold of severity, in our cases, when it goes higher than 3, well, then it's considered to be a critical task. And then you identify these, but then the objective is to mitigate these as much as possible during your formative evaluation. So then you reduce this amount of critical tasks. So maybe you would be free of a summative evaluation by the end of it, or maybe you will have to conduct it, but on a reduced amount of workflow or tasks, I would say.
And I think it's very important to build a list of the master list of the arms, so you can associate severities and you can reuse that list in all the risk analysis that you do. So when it's done, it's very easy to reuse it in every risk and analysis or activities that you do. So that's also another tip that we often
And
use.
if I can add another tip to your tip,
Please.
would be to include your subject matter experts in this harmless identification.
Absolutely.
Well, because they do know what would be the harm, like physically or mentally speaking. So it kind of gives you this confidence, like, okay, like we're properly set in terms of harms, and then your risk analysis will go very smoothly and fluidly.
Okay, very cool. Rashid asks, what about devices already developed in the market? I know there are lots of comments. Early is better, but how do you implement these measures if you already have something that's maybe commercialized or maybe close to it?
Okay, I just want to read the question. What about devices are already developed?
I can maybe start by that. What's important to do when it's about a device that is already developed and you want to improve, from what I understand, first thing you need to do is a kind of a gap analysis of the differences that you have with your previous devices, and identify is the changes or the differences impact the user interface. So if the user interface is impacted, then you will be able to apply all the process that we talk about to define, okay, what's impacted, what changes do we want to implement, and analyze the impact on the risk of those changes. And based on the risk, you will define if it's critical or not, and then apply even higher measures.
Yes, and you know what? I would recommend like to go through the whole task analysis, the whole workflow scenarios during formative evaluation, like preferably with participant users, to make sure like that the improvement or this new button or this new screen that you just add to your product, yes, it can create new use risks in itself, but then it can create other use risks on the other user interface components. So you need to understand like what is the behavior between these new elements and the rest of your already like existing system.
Okay. Danielle asks, can you give some tips and tricks to set up your URA or UFMEA, and where do you start?
Well, we don't do UFMEA, only URRA. So we start with the task analysis. Honestly, no, not really. I'm lying.
Two things.
We start with the use specifications to have a broader understanding, like of the context of everything. And then we do what we call user journey maps. So it's like a task analysis, but more sexy, I would say, because it encompasses everything from the user perspective. So what is happening before the experience, during the experience, and also after. It's a UX tool, basically. And then when we have like this high-level understanding of the user experience, the user journey, we are able to extract the tasks, like the interaction between the user and the product, to a task analysis. It's more dry, a task analysis, but it's really important for your use-related risk analysis. So I would see it as a broader, and then like you open your diamond on your user experience understanding, and then try to close it by be more and more specific about the tasks and the subtasks and the subtasks, if applicable.
And if you start from a blank page and you don't really know where to start, you can still use the Annex A of the IEC TR 24971, which have questions to identify what is called characteristics related to safety. And there is a section, I think it's .2.31 or something like that, that addresses questions on the user interface to be able to identify if the user interface participates in the risk or the other situations. So you can also start with that, simple questions, you answer them, and you will see, and you will be able to start identifying your hazards.
And these references are included in this presentation, so you can just download the PDF version.
Okay. I'm just kind of trying to come up with another related one. This one I think might be good for this topic. How advanced should the URA be at the moment of defining the design inputs? Wouldn't creating it be premature at this point? And she's thinking mostly about risk control measures.
Yeah. So the design process will be iterative, as will be the design inputs. So we are trying to define the design inputs as early in the development process as possible, but we may be missing some information. Some information that we'll need prototype to deeply define, and so we will issue a first draft of the design inputs. And as soon as the URA and risk controls comes, we will improve and add those design controls or those risk controls to the design inputs. So if you have the information to build your URA very soon in the design, it will be really useful for the developers and designers. But if you don't have that information and it takes more time, just plan for it in your development plan. So your development plan will guide everything, and through the development plan, you will be able to coordinate all your activities. And what we really see is that this coordination that is very essential in a development project. So identify what's needed and provide it to the team as soon as possible. So I didn't really answer the question, but it can really vary from one product to another depending on the available information, etc.
Okay. Yeah, the development plan is a powerful tool if used correctly. So
yeah,
very cool.
And you can do by iterations. Also, you can have you can identify the main risk controls that you want to implement by the user interface, for example, and go into more details after. But what's important is to identify the main blocks of the design.
Yes, URA is a living document. So I think that if you're able to have a first pass on it before the design input creation, that would be good. And just accept that it's not the perfect version of it, but then keep it iteratively as possible and try to communicate these changes to the team during the development process.
Okay. Thank you for that great answer. Now, I'm going to share this one. Crew, shout out to Crew, by the way. How are you doing? Good to see you again. You mentioned that Greenlight Groove's risk module is helpful for establishing the URA. However, the URA contains some additional columns that are not present in the Greenlight Groove module, such as the use step, which is more in line with ISO 14971. Can you shed some light on tips on how you would utilize the Greenlight Groove risk module to help generate the URA? I might not ordinarily ask this one, but someone else asked about how to incorporate all of the different aspects into the URA manually or software. So
yeah, that's a good question, and we
had a talk about it.
experimenting things on that side as well. What we are doing for now is like the discussion we have earlier. Some clients prefer to have two separate analysis. So everything that's use related can be identified as broad hazards in the risk matrix of Greenlight Groove, and then reference very more detailed analysis in the URA that you can do on the side. Or you can do the URA on the side and then construct a summary of that analysis that resumes the hazards, hazardous situations, and risk evaluation, and import that into the CLEIO risk module as well. So it's really dependent on how many documents you want to maintain and how you want to maintain them.
Well, of course, as many documents as possible, right? No, no. Great answer. And I might just add that, crew, if you're interested in learning more about that, and anyone who's interested in learning more about how to optimize your use of the risk module, I'm sure our gurus would be happy to maybe have a group session on that. I'll just make that as a recommendation for them. They do group sessions every now and then. Okay. We've already answered the question about how many iterations. So I'm looking through the highest voted questions. How about this one from Victor? What is the tip? What is your tip for small companies where, due to the deadline to deliver the project, some activities like the development of use specification, risk analysis, and user interface formative evaluation all happen in parallel? What are your tips there?
Collaboration.
Yes, short answer is collaboration, but let's say like the team is small. You know what, Victor, we face this challenge on a day-to-day basis, even if like we're quite a big company. Everything kind of goes in parallel because time is money, as we know. But even though I would try to kind of create a rhythm and prioritize. So maybe you can do 40% of your use spec, and then you can go a bit on your risk analysis. And like, as I mentioned, everything is intertwined. So I don't see the usability process as like pieces, like A, B, C, D, you know, it's organic and you need to remain flexible, but I would try to do a good bunch, like to improve each document, like respecting the chronology of the process. And then once you kind of attain, I would say, I don't know, like for instance, this 30% will then go to your analysis. And then maybe you can think about your user interface evaluation plan, for instance, because everything is related. So it wouldn't make sense to do one thing fully completed and then go to the other one because they are living documents. So,
yeah. And you also need to evaluate if, for example, a theoretical risk analysis will take more time than the actual testing of the user interface that you have. So even if the user interface is not complete, you can obtain results with a formative evaluation that will confirm and reduce the time you will spend on the risk analysis itself. Mm-hmm. So it's really an evaluation you need to do on what's come first and in what order you want to do things. But as Maud said, if you define objectives and milestones, you can build on them and focus your energy to reach to that milestone and then go on the other one and on the other one. So planning by milestone usually work well.
Okay. Fantastic. I know we've been going a long time. Your brains are probably still racing, I'm sure. And let's ask one last question. This one's from Rai Chaudhary, if I'm saying your name correctly. Great to see you again. Rai, can you shed some light on foreseeable misuse? There were a few different questions about foreseeable misuse and abnormal use. Wondered if you could just speak to that very briefly. I'm not going to put you on the spot for a specific question, but if you want to add some light there.
Well, to me, foreseeable misuse could be, as mentioned earlier, mainly by Jean-Yves, is by identifying the adverse events that have been entered into the FDA database, for instance, of equivalent or similar devices. But also I think that it can come from research, literature and scientific research, maybe some issues, not like a report per se, but an article that talks about the specific issues. Well, then you can use it and then like include it into your analysis. So the short answer would be this. I don't know, Jahiv, how do you feel about like the specific kind of
misuse? It's important to keep the granularity and the level of details of the analysis to the right level. So when doing, for example, a brainstorm on the risks that can happen and identifying foreseeable hazards, it's important to identify everything, but to add a layer of, in French, we say bon sens. Common sense to what you identify, So I think it's important to do that, not to maintain the document or an analysis that covers a very big part and a very long list of different hazards that may not be foreseeable or probable at all. So it's important to do that. If you put too much in your analysis from the start, you will lose the focus on the real risks that you want to identify. And I think that's a common error. We go in depth with subjects that are not in the main, that does not bring the main risk of the device, and we focus on low risks, but we need to focus on the higher risks because those are the ones we want to reduce as much as possible, and those are the ones that will main impact the design and every other step that we are doing as well.
I love that. I love the reference to common sense as well. It makes me think of a phrase. I can't remember it exactly, but common sense isn't always very common because we don't all come from a common background. So which harkens to having the importance of diversity of thought, whether it's clinicians or different, whoever may be utilizing the device. It's very cool. And the other thought that I had, and I don't want to add this because nobody cares what Etienne thinks, but foreseeable use versus foreseen misuse. That's a slightly different question for a different topic, for a different day maybe, but very cool. Thank you so much for the informative presentation, the valuable insights throughout today's session. Just for those of you whose questions we were not able to get to, I know we have 13 minutes left technically, but I feel like we should, every now and then we should cut things off just a little bit early because we have so many questions to answer. So what we'll do is we'll provide those to Maud and Jean-Yves so that they can look at those, potentially get back to you. I don't know. I mean, they're very busy as well. So if they're able to, I'm sure they will. But we'll provide those to the presenters. So hopefully if you didn't get your question answered, we can get you some kind of feedback. As a reminder, we will be sending you today's recording and the presentation slides. So on behalf of Greenlight Guru, thank you all for attending today's webinar. We hope that you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Etienne.
All right. Take care, everyone.